3, 2, 1, showtime!
CO, hello, I am Cade, and welcome to Double Feature Movie Club. This is a very interesting episode. It's our 24th episode, first off. That's not why it's interesting, though. We are talking, just before we jump in, I'll just say we are talking A Most Violent Year and Beyond the Black Rainbow. But first, I have to introduce my guest, one guest here today, and that is Harrison.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, how are you doing, Harrison?
I'm happy I sabotaged Diane's day, so I get the show all to myself.
Yeah, so this is, we're in the studio, which is also, it's a rare treat anyways. But on top of that, no Diane, which is sad.
I'm glad you went with the sad angle, because I agree in principle, though I would not admit it on this show most of the time.
Yes.
However, Diane, heart goes out to you.
Yes. She's fine. She's fine. She is. I guess. I mean, she never told me not to share this information, so I get the feeling that it's okay, and that is, she is dealing with a mouse problem. A mouse problem. I think it's a series of. Did you see the movie Mousetrap?
I didn't see the movie. I played the board game a lot as a kid.
Or Mouse Hunt? What's it? There's
Mouse Trap? I
don't know. The Mousetrap is the game, yes, but there was a movie. Now that
Diane's story could be adapted into a Pixar film.
Yes.
Maybe like Ratatouille 4.5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or Ratatouille 33 1/3.
So there was a knockoff Ratatouille that was made. That was a Ratatouille. Yeah. Some YouTuber made a thing about that how this company tried to make like this knockoff Ratatouille.
Why would you pun there? Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, this is. I guess the original title was a pun, but that's no excuse.
Yeah.
Ratatouille.
Mm-hmm. So
that hurts.
So we're talking two films. Also, audience out there, be sure to comment live if you're on the live stream.
Mm-hmm.
But later you can subscribe or like or whatever. If you're listening, we live stream here every Sundays at 6 p.m. Central. Mm-hmm. Well, really, it's now moved to 6:15, and with some padding room. And on YouTube.com/Cade Thomas. We're also Twitch.tv/the Cade Thomas. If you,
the more platforms you subscribe to Cade on, the more likely he'll be on time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the audience's problem that we're not on time, right?
So donate however many Twitch bits.
Yeah.
Subscribe at the level 3 tier.
Mm-hmm.
Hop on YouTube.
Yeah.
Go to Spotify and just play him on repeat while you're watching him on Twitch on all of your devices.
Yeah. Good. So that is and then later as next day as a podcast. And this time
I'm streaming our show right now on my phone.
Is it good? Is it?
I mean, it's. I've never been more impressed by the show.
Great. That's high praise. So yeah, this is the part of the show where we kind of banter a bit before we get to the actual thing. Another good addition to this episode is the Pac-Man machine is on. It is on and live and showing all the characters. Yes, it is on mute, but you did hear a rendition just then. That was beautiful.
Inky, Blinky,
Pinky,
and Dot or Sue?
Clyde.
Clyde.
Sue is the Miss Pac-Man.
Dot is Animaniacs.
Well, so we're gonna jump into these films. Last week, Harrison, you weren't on, but we discussed. We talked. Let me try to think about the two movies: Cinema Verite and The Post, which were two movies that took place in the early 70s, real life movies. So this was our 80s week.
Yeah.
Neither one of these movies are based on real life events, well, that we know of.
I mean, there are so many homages in Beyond the Black Rainbow that, I mean, not based off of real life events, but you see the influences for sure.
And the other one, I mean, it does take place in a real life setting of New York City in the 80s. But I believe the other one, I don't know if Ava's on here or not as our listening, but I believe the other ones were 71 and 73, and tonight's is 81 and 83. So it kind of is a cool thing. So yeah, 70s, 80s.
Also 1966, don't forget.
Oh, yes, also 1966. But we'll talk about these movies and talk about what we loved about them, what we didn't love about them, really dissect them deep. But this is where we kind of banter a bit. Is there anything you wanted to highlight or talk about?
I mean, there are so many needles that I want to put into this movie that I'm glad that you used the dissect metaphor there. But what was the question?
Was there anything you wanted to talk about before we dissected these films?
Anything but one of the films. But no, not really.
I wanted to say
happy it's Sunday. Happy I'm here. Happy that Pac-Man's on. Can't wait to beat your high score later.
Yeah. I'll tell you if we want to talk about Pac. So this machine has a few different Pac-Man games on it. My favorite Pac-Man game is Super Pac-Man.
What is super about Super Pac-Man?
It is he can go big. So
Okay.
there's the power pill. It makes you go big. And so essentially what it is it's a grid. It's a grid, and you have to collect the dots. But that's what's different. But I'll explain the rudimentaries of Pac-Man in general.
This is a genre-breaking experience I'm having right now. Like,
and there's 4 ghosts.
I didn't realize video games could be like this.
But
welcome to 80s week.
Yeah, you're right. This is 80s week, so we get to talk. That's our excuse.
Yes.
So you go. What the thing is like it has sections of it blocked off by a bar, and you have to collect keys around the thing to unlock the bar. Okay. Or you can break through the bars by being the big Pac-Man, which there's only 2 of those power things in the entire.
So
grid.
Pac-Man's an alcoholic. Breaking through the bars.
And so it's like different things are off limits. So either you collect the key or you go big and you break through all them. But of course that's temporary. And then there's also the power pill to make you eat the ghosts. And so that's also still part of it too. And so the best 1-2 thing is to get the big thing and get the ball that turns them into blue, and then eat them all. And then
so I see Pac-Man's escalation in this mutually assured destruction, but what are the ghosts' escalation here?
Ghosts have not escalated their fight. I guess they have hid keys around everywhere. Maybe that's their thing, and they're like trying to keep their dots, and so they've hid them behind walls. Maybe that's their side thing. There is also an addition of a slot machine in the middle of it that you, if you come and collect a star within a certain part, you get to maybe get a jackpot on one of the things. So it's got a lot going on.
Thank you for training the kids young.
Namco.
Namco. And I'm pretty sure that Namco also owns a bunch of pachinko machines and like basically the version of gambling that is legal in Japan.
Yeah.
Just funneling them all over there.
Yes. And Konami also owns a lot of, and that's their Frogger. And I think that's, so it is fun stuff.
I'll take a Frogger slot machine over some of the dumb ones that I've seen.
Yes. I do. So I did want to say I did see Halloween Ends also, the new Halloween movie.
Oh,
where they're ending. That's it. I don't know if you were interested.
They got so sick of the franchise that they named the movie Halloween Ends.
Halloween Ends. Yep. It's the last. It's supposedly the last one.
BS. Nobody names a movie franchise. Nobody names the last film in a movie franchise and is ever serious about it. This is they needed a little bit of a. Mike Myers wasn't really like scaring everybody anymore as much, and so they're just like, but it ends.
Yeah,
they're like, oh wait, now I have to see it.
So whenever they
hold on, I got to go buy my online AMC tickets to Halloween Ends. I mean, it's going to be the last one. It's limited edition, man.
You can also just watch it on Peacock, by the way. It's also there at the same time.
Straight to Peacock.
Straight to Peacock. So the way when they pitched this the new run of Halloween movies they brought it back for Halloween, and when they announced that, they were like, well, the first Halloween's the only one that's canon. And so like the idea was that they were bringing back Jamie Lee Curtis, and it was going to be 35 years afterwards or whatever it was, 40.
So all the other movies are headcanon.
Yeah. Yes.
they just fan fiction like pulled the audience like, what do you want to see in a Halloween movie? Let's make believe. Only the first.
So they cut out all the middle ones of being canon, and they had announced then that it was going to come back for a trilogy, and they said it was going to be called Halloween, Halloween Kills, Halloween Ends, and those were the 3 Halloween movies, and that was going to be their definitive trilogy. And so you were like, the entire time, you assume, oh well, they have a whole idea of what this trilogy is going to be, and if they're coming back for this, and they already named the titles way years in advance when they made the first one, and it becomes very apparent that there's no way that they planned this to be the exact way that it went.
They got their 3-movie deal.
Yeah.
Well before the story was plotted out.
But at the same time, I enjoy. I'll tell you, it's not the movie that they advertise, and it's not the movie that I think most people want from a Halloween movie, and but it kind of is a little interesting what they do with it. But then they kind of go back on what they were creating, and so it was this. I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I won't bore people with it all.
Would you call it botched or worthy, valiant attempt of something different, even though it's not what people wanted?
I think it was it. To me, they essentially brought in a new character into this final trilogy and made them the kind of main person in this, and it kind of showed them from their perspective and really underutilized all the rest of the characters of the entire thing for this new character. And that new character was somewhat interesting, and like it was an interesting story, but it seemed bizarre to do that. And it seemed like in my head that character was supposed to be one of the other characters. The producers
were so sick of everybody's agents. So sick of Jamie Lee Curtis's agent, and so it had to be done.
But no, I found it interesting. I would say check it out. I think that it's, like I said, not the movie that a lot of people thought that they were going to see, but still somewhat fascinating. Yesterday I saw that ties into this just slightly. There was someone out on the side of the road where I was passing by. They were taking their dog out to use the bathroom, and I noticed the dog first, just out there, but then I noticed the person who was standing holding the dog was Michael Myers. He was standing there at the side of the road looking just steely at all the cars passing by, and so someone had really fun with that.
I'm looking forward to the romantic comedy with Mike Myers, like just meet cuting with walking a dog.
But I just want
that long, intense stare.
It was very human. Like he personified him too. He was just like standing completely still, like looking at the cars passing by, and it was really good.
As I was leaving lunch today, this Jeep pulled up, kind of caddy cornered to the left, had a full on like fake Halloween skeleton, like full size on its grill, like on its front grill. Is that even street legal? And And then I think they had like a pentagram on their tire like cover on the back of this Jeep. It was ridiculous, but
wow.
Yeah. But like some of my neighbors get real pumped over Halloween. Like this one guy's got skeletons all over his house and like in the yard, all full size. They're just hanging off of the gutters and stuff. It's nuts. But I mean, I understand. Do it up big. Halloween. It's fun.
It's fun. I wish, in retrospect, we would have had more of our movies be horror films. Our Halloween episode will have a horror film in it, but we kind of did a little bit weird. But yes, but even like today we have
Halloween needs like one part kitsch and one part horror. I mean that's the holiday.
Yes, which yeah. I think one of our movies has at least one part kitsch in it, don't you think?
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, this is a tell, of course, but oh man, yeah, yep, kitschy. Let's call it kitschy. Works for me.
Great.
Oh,
there it is. Well, great. I think we'll jump in now. I think we've delayed the inevitable enough. So we are going to talk our movies, which are A Most Violent Year and Beyond the Black Rainbow first, A Most Violent Year, which I will discuss the plot of. I don't get to do that very often. For 2014, I think that's what it is. 2014's A Most Violent Year. After this little musical interlude. Hello. This is our first feature, A Most Violent Year from 2014. It's an A24 movie. It stars Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain. It's directed by J.C. Chandor. Chandor? I don't know how you pronounce it.
I don't know.
Were you here on Margin Call? You were here on Margin Call, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So, was Margin Call the one you did remote? That's not important to the story, but...
No. Margin Call was with Inherent Vice, and that's
that's our last episode.
I was here.
Well, that's from our last episode that you won't ever.
Wait. So our last episode
was our
sound was bad?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry. I forgot to mention that too. Yes. Our full episode. Which once again, I'll switch back here.
I thought you had one like last Sunday or something.
No, it was our episode.
You lost my oh man. To be fair, like yeah. It wasn't one for the annals or anything, but I had fun.
Yeah, so we lost our episode. We mentioned this last week and then on thing, but I guess I didn't tell you about it. Our last episode, our 22nd, I believe, double feature was our lost episode, Lost Media, and it'll forever be remembered as that. I guess we talked Margin Call and Inherent Vice. It's out there. You can watch it on YouTube. But I'd have to clean up the audio quite a bit to release it as a podcast, and I still don't know if it would be worth them.
We're just gonna plug some instructions into an AI, and they'll recreate me and Cade and Diane, and the bit about the weighted blanket will be in there.
The tinfoil,
yeah,
the trauma blanket,
the tinfoil, talking about how HGTV basically caused the 2008 financial crisis. Stuff like that.
It was a really good episode to lose, but oh well. Oh well.
Yeah.
Oh well.
We're here now. And yeah.
Oh, sorry. I'm supposed to tell you about Most Violent Year. So back to my screen here. Most Violent Year. So the guy who wrote and directed this also wrote and directed Margin Call, that was his first feature, and this is his third after he did that boat movie with Robert Redford. I don't know if you ever saw where Robert Redford is lost in a he's on a boat and it goes into a storm.
I haven't seen a Robert Redford movie in a really long time.
Mm-hmm. It was a lot of Oscar buzz whenever he did that for his act. But anyways, and then
this director clearly loves business in New York. It's a very undercovered topic, which
yeah. So the Oscar Isaac, he plays an immigrant who has come and made a oil. He's an oil supplier or whatever what would you call it? He's a fuel supplier.
So supplier of heating oil.
Heating oil. Yes. And so he has these tankers that drive around the city that supply these oil, and he's trying to expand his business, but he has to adhere to this very this moral compass that he has. And his wife is Jessica Chastain, who comes from a crime family, a mob family, and that's she's the daughter of a mob boss, which we'll talk about all that. And he's trying to go by the straight and narrow with all this stuff, but everyone keeps trying to pull him into this through various things, and he's trying to essentially he has 30 days to close a deal with buying a rival business's area that will get him to the port. And get him more fuel tanks that he needs to grow his business.
Essentially, he'll be able to scale, and he's going to make some serious money off of this.
Yes, and he needs it for the growth of his company, and in order to compete with the other people that's there. Yeah,
he's buying the property from what appears to be a very traditional Orthodox, Hasidic Jewish family, and the congratulations, the Mazel Tov and everything over all of the negotiations and everything. I really liked that. I loved Oscar Isaac's performance and reaction, and that cultural kind of tension that was there. Mm-hmm. It was really great. I really enjoyed it.
And his lawyer is Albert Brooks, by the way. I don't know. Yeah, which was a good role for him too.
It honestly was.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's a lot of maneuvering and how he's dealing with essentially what ends up causing him the most trouble is his fuel tanks end up getting robbed quite a bit, and he's getting pressure by the Teamster union to arm his drivers in order to protect themselves, or that they were going to essentially tell them not to work for his company because of how unsafe it was. And so, but he doesn't want to be viewed as this organization where, he wants to be above that, above guns and not have to worry about that, and wants to play it completely with all. But he gets his, so there's that side of things. There's the side of the city is investigating. There's an assistant DA who's been tasked with, trying to clean up this oil industry and the corruption there. Yep. And so he's been investigating Oscar Isaac's company quite a bit, and all the other companies in there.
And there's a good just kind of extended bit in the movie about we're following standard industry practice.
Yeah.
Well, you also happen to be very slimy oil New York kind of.
Yes.
And it's funny,
and no one really quit. They sometimes quit, but they know that that's kind of just a line that
the cost, the cost of doing business, or what is it? The wheels of whatever greased by a little bit of corruption here.
And the bank didn't. So he's also dealing with this bank.
Yeah.
And so the bank didn't. With that conversation at the restaurant, it seemed very much that they knew that there was the standard industry practices line was kind of just something to say, and that it was supposed, and so they didn't even question it until it became a bigger problem for them.
Yeah. And it was honestly really funny to see all of these. I'm presuming heating oil, but maybe they're into other kinds of oil. Who knows? Hanging out at a darkened restaurant in New York City. It's very kitschy mafia feeling to it, even though none of them seem to be really into organized crime, and like they're all characters that seem pretty very like they're all well developed, and none of them seem to be like really of the same kind of background very much. They all seem to have gotten into the business in different ways. And I like how the story like got into that, but I can really see how this movie didn't like it lost a good amount of money. It's just because the subject matter is not really very compelling to a whole lot of people.
Yes.
Despite Oscar Isaac and Jessica Chastain putting in some fantastic performances. Also, the assistant DA, I forget the actor's name, Odabaya or something like that.
He's in a lot of things, David. Yeah.
Yeah. Odaboyo. He was phenomenal as well.
Yes. What I liked is that they weren't. They were trying to. They're very humanist. They weren't like doing big broadcast. Like this seems to be playing against the type of what a mob movie would. It's playing. It knows what you're sort of expecting a movie like that to be, and I think that's also why it probably didn't do so well. Is it's in direct contrast to what those types of movies are. And it's intentionally so.
Precisely. When is Oscar Isaac's Godfather Part 2 moment? Like, when is he going to turn heel?
Yeah, no, it's, yeah, exactly. And so like you know that like he's resisting, and like, and it's excellent to see someone who's he has this strict moral compass, but where does that line sort of break, and what influences that? And I found that to be very interesting. His character very interesting, but the heart of the thing is him and Jessica Chastain's scenes together, and sort of how that push and pull of that of someone who is so a part of the crime family and comes from a crime family.
I mean, given how kind of uncompromising his character was, the consequences of how uncompromising he was were pretty impressive, just as far as like story is concerned in this. His relationship with the driver, who's originally like has the tar beaten out of him and he's hospitalized, and it's like, get on back in that truck. And just like that kind of downward spiral that just seems like this poor truck driver seems to be really a victim of circumstance in so many ways. Yes. And Oscar Isaac's like very uncompromising, like hard driving business person, really messes with this truck driver's life in a lot of ways.
But he almost has to. The point is the sort of tragedy that comes from like what you have to do in order to make it, like what you have to give up in order to make it, which is giving up a lot of your humanity and giving up a lot of
to succeite in the oil business in New York City.
Exactly. Yeah. But I also think it's kind of about capitalism in general. I mean, I think that's sort of the idea. I read somewhere it was an anti-capitalist mob movie is the idea, that's what some reviewer called it. And I think that is a huge part of it, is that it's kind of saying what it's,
given that like a plot device, I can see it kind of cutting both ways there. Given that a plot device was Jessica Chastain skimming money off of the company to kind of save their dream of purchasing this land, and then like some of the dialogue, like the look at you, Mr. fucking American Dream. And man, Jessica Chastain's like wrath was really impressive. Yeah.
It was so the movie is built on, just for the audience now, you of course know it's because you've seen the movie, Harrison, but the people who haven't seen the movie, it's built on a lot of these one-on-one conversations. There's those where he's like talking with his competitors. There's a lot of those scenes where he goes to wherever he sees these people at, or goes to their homes, and they each sort of show different sides of what he could become, or what he wants to become, or what there's different parts of that. But there's also these these business dealings. That's a huge part of it too, and what it has to be with these different business dealings. I think
he wants to become the guy who has a search warrant served on his house at his children's birthday party.
So yeah, that's what ends up, of course, happening is that, and then like it's not unlike a lot of these other mob movies. It's not, and this isn't a mob movie, but it's playing into that sort of genre a bit. It doesn't ever show any of this as something wanted. Like you never want in this, never like a lot of them like, oh, it's good for a while, like this was the good times. It never seems like something, and I think that's a really good point when Albert Brooks talks to him and he's like, why do you want all this? Like I've never asked you that. Why do you want? And he's like, well, I need this business because of, this will get me to the harbor and will get me. He's like, well, no, that's not what I'm not saying. Why do you need this? I understand why you need this one for what you're doing, but why do you want any of this? And he's like, I don't understand.
It's like, I forget which movie it was, but it's like asking a person like, who are you? And then they talk about their job and he's like, no, who are you?
Yeah. And so it begs the question of like what is the purpose of the American dream in general, and what do you have to sort of give up for that? I think that is at the heart of what this movie is about, is to what end? Okay, you become the king of this empire,
right?
But it doesn't bring you any more happiness than what you have, because you never really were happy. But also you've left a trail of destruction your whole way, and it's off the backs of these people that you've really hurt, and people that bought into the lie and it didn't work out for them, which is his driver.
Yeah,
that's a good part of how to clue people in. There's a driver. It's his driver who is one of the ones who was
also an immigrant.
Yes, he was also an immigrant, but his truck was stolen. This truck that he was driving was stolen at gunpoint.
Yeah.
A big driving force behind this movie, also to know, is who's doing this.
Right.
That's a big question of the movie. Who's stealing these trucks? Which of his rival businessmen is okaying this? Why are they doing this to him? Are they trying to sabotage this deal that he's trying to get through?
Right. And a big hint there just comes from the title, Most Violent Year. New York City, 1981, is apparently the most like crime-ridden, the most murders, the most like just nasty crime. Of any year, kind of statistically, in New York City up until that point. And like the city was famous for being like pretty rough throughout the 70s, and then just 1981 just tops it all. So yeah. Anyways.
Yes. No, that's a good point. So what ends up happening is this guy gets his truck stolen, and he gets beat up and like really hurt, and like he's off work for quite some time because of how hurt he was in that. And then essentially Oscar Isaac just brings him back in and everything, and he's pretty shocked himself, and it happens again, and the sort of repercussions of that. And he has a gun at that point.
Yep.
And it essentially, so then he goes on the run from the cops, and this is a whole other sort of B plot or C plot of the story. But the point of that was to sort of show, like, he looked up to Oscar Isaac. He was an immigrant as well. There was a whole point about whenever he was like wanting to talk to him behind the things, and he was talking Spanish and Oscar Isaac's English, only. Like, that's also a very fascinating part of this movie that it gets dealt with just a bit, is like when he goes to his home and he's speaking Spanish to his wife. That's a very, very fascinating. It's sort of the immigrant experience there.
Yeah.
It's an undercurrent of it, but it is sort of the point of the movie as well in a lot of respects.
Oh yeah. Yeah. As far as it being like a good critique of someone just being incredibly driven to succeed, and like, I guess the dream is what, like, security and like material wealth and success, and just like each next step of the way, like there's no like top of the ladder. It's just got to keep climbing,
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you see his character being insanely driven, but you don't really see him enjoying any of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like,
well, and he knows what's in at the end of the road because he goes and he talks to that his competitor, who's like his big competitor, who essentially lives in this fortress. He says that's how he explains it, and that's what he has. He's like, well, you have to, if you come up to my level, you have to live in this sort of way because people will burglarize you. They'll steal things from you. They'll come in with a gun, like, so you have to live in this house where you have guards that only allows certain people in, and he's like, it's like, so you've built all that for that. That's the end goal that you want.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
You now have your own luxury prison.
Yeah. And so that's where he's like, well, I don't want that, but at the same time, that's where he's heading. Like, that's what he's going to have to do in order to afford. And that's also very true of what happens when
it'll
you get
be different for me.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But speaking of, one of my favorite things is when him and his wife would him and Jessica Chastain would talk, and
their conversations were great.
Their conversation, yes, and they'd get into arguments and they do all that. But my favorite thing is this whole time they were putting up these fronts of who they were to people out there. He's putting up this businessman. He's speaking with like a very plain, dry American accent. She's does that too outwardly and doesn't want to. She kind of wants to move past her roots.
And then you get her angry.
Yes, and they're both, when they get angry and everything, they start dropping their accent, and like that is a brilliant acting choice from them. It's like because it seems so naturalistic that these people are angry and they're dropping their, but then they're putting on it. So like that was very, very fascinating that they both would drop there, and they would say these insults and they were very, very cutting,
very pointed,
of where they were. So like but their scenes were the highlights of the movements. And they've worked together since then. They've been in a few things together since, so they really do like working with each other.
Yeah. The how do I put it? There are a number of really tense scenes in this movie that in other movies are really cliche, but in this movie, like, are just done super well. Like, you get the guy robbing a house, and they're like chasing after that. Then, the little girl finds a gun in the yard. But like, that's just still just like the moment of tension in that scene is just remarkable. It's really fantastic. And, the reactions are all like little girl being like, "Am I in trouble?"
Yeah.
But yeah, no. And even the big chase scene towards the end of the movie, I loved that I didn't know where this chase scene was going to end up. And it's really like a good kind of, this is something that could happen in New York City in terms of a chase, but I didn't think it was going to happen like that. So,
yes. And I mean, this movie, it had I think $20 million budget or something like that. It was, but obviously it did not make, neither one of the movies that we're talking about today made there. Yes, it's a $20 budget and made $12 million. They were both operated at a loss. I think they most of their stuff went to getting all these cars and getting all these.
Maybe the mafia funded it. We can do a totally not mafia movie.
Yeah. They will never suspect it. No, so there was quite a few different things, like, oh wow, they put a lot of effort into getting that shot and that exterior right, and
yes.
And I remember the one on it was one of the bridges, and they had a whole bunch of cars that they had to do in order to get the sort of robbing of the van. Then they're running through there.
Always during traffic jams.
Yes, exactly. So I'm like, that's a lot of cars you had to get. And some of them, like, you could see, like, at a certain point it was like digital or whatever, but still there was I believe all of those ones in that area had to be real. And
right.
That's always your number one thing whenever you're making a period piece. People always look at the cars because, you have to bring those in, and it's a whole thing. And especially if you have to, flip over a tank or not tank, a oil
tanker
tank,
truck.
Tanker truck, yes. It's a lot. The budget goes up there, but but all of that was just backdrop for the sort of story there. I liked the different families, the different organizations he had to go to. They went into their whole family stories. Like that was a big part of. I really did like that.
I honestly liked how proud the granddaughter was of her purchase of the inheritance of the oil company.
Yes.
And just how she carried herself very well and was someone who you're like, that person's going to succeed in whatever they choose in life. But no. In that business,
that was
straight up, straight up seemed like she knew what she was doing.
Yes.
And it's hard to create compelling characters who are just like, this is not a glamorous or exciting business. It's selling home heating oil. And yet still both the truckers had a compelling kind of subplot, and the salespeople had a compelling subplot.
Yes.
And the scheming attorneys and accountants and like everybody has believable character arcs, interesting angles, their motives and their everything is well defined.
Yes. And which people were going to. So essentially everyone's put under sort of different pressures, but like they set up all these characters and they sort of see, well, which one of these people are going to end up helping him and which are the people that's going to turn their backs to him and which ones are going to use this opportunity that he had where to their advantage. And it was all very, very fascinating because you never knew which ones were going to fall the way that they do. Spoilers for this movie slightly. What ends up sort of spurring the second half of this movie is the bank pulls out with days left of this financing deal. It's a bank that has financed his entire operations up to this point and said that they were essentially, we're good to finance you for this new endeavor because you paid us back always ahead of time and everything. Whenever his truck driver pulls the gun out there.
Which isn't necessarily like, that's not a favorable... Audience will think that's a favorable thing, but banks are like, man, those people are annoying. We can't make more money off of them like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, anyways,
but what ends up happening, of course, is that guy. There was the shootout at the truck with the guy we mentioned earlier, and they essentially are like, we're out. There's a new case that's been brought. They were already getting investigated for financial reasons. Yeah, they didn't seem to mind that.
They're like, well, okay, we'll figure something out. I mean, what happens really when a company gets charged? We'll just slap you on the wrist.
Yes.
I mean, we can't show that. We can't show us really cracking down on business if we want those. Good old free markets and happy times to keep on rolling.
Yes, so that's
as happy as you could be in New York City in 1981.
And I don't know if we've mentioned this before. Jessica Chastain is also the person who's the bookkeeper for his company.
Yes,
which is important to note.
Very important.
And so that's also her role in the company. So they initially that was where they were like, we follow standard industry practices. And they were like, whatever.
Yeah. Which probably also involves skimming money.
Yes,
but. Just those couple of scenes where she is punching in numbers like with the eraser of her pencil and she's like looking down and it's just total natural, like keeping the numbers going. Just absolutely in her element and even though the movie lost money, it felt like a movie that was they got a bargain for the $20 million that they spent on stuff.
Yeah, so what ends up the bank says we can't operate here because of this because of you're being investigated now for this
it's like 14 counts.
Yes.
And then the attorney was explaining who's the actor,
the attorney David I would imagine it's Oiloyo.
Oh, that's the assistant AG.
Yes.
But who's the...
Oh, you mean Albert
the
Brooks?
Company? Yeah, Albert Brooks.
Brooks, yes.
Albert Brooks is explaining, you got 14 charges. 2 or 3 of them are probably serious, and they're like felonies. It's explained later on. But yeah, they get charged, and the bank's like, you guys, we can't work with you. You're probably criminals. You got all this stuff hanging over your head, and we're a bank. Peace. Pretty much the long and short of it.
Yes, and Albert Brooks is really, he's really good in this. He's very, very matter of fact, but he very much cares about them too. I think that he's someone who is, this business confidant of like, he's like someone who's like, I want the best interest of this thing to go forward, but I think he plays it perfectly fine, and like he's always there to represent. He would
be the capo of a mafia family.
Yes, exactly. And so I think that was like very intentional with that sort of confidant that you have there. You know what I learned about Albert Brooks was that he's do you know Super Dave? Mm-mm. Super Dave. He was the guy who do you ever watch Curb Your Enthusiasm?
Yes.
Okay, so he's Marty Funkhauser. Okay, so he's that guy. He was in the 70s and 80s and everything. He would appear on these talk shows, and he would be like this stunt man who would go and throw himself into a wall or what. Like it would be some sort of funny thing of like he was awful at his job. And so as people mostly know him as Super
like
Dave.
Chevy Chase.
Yes, and so people would know him as Super Dave because he would go on there he'd go on Letterman and he'd go on Leno and all the different things of doing this these bits. Well. Yeah, and then he, of course, later was on Curb Your Enthusiasm. He was on Arrested Development too. He was the whatever for George Bluth. He was his body surrogate, and he would repeat lines. That was one of my favorite bits with him. But anyways, he's Albert Brooks' brother. Yeah. So they're brothers, and their actual surname, their last name is not Brooks. His isn't even. He doesn't go by Brooks. Anyways, it's Einstein. So it's Albert Einstein. Albert Brooks' real name's Albert Einstein, but he changed it, obviously.
Clearly, yeah. I mean, it's hard to have an acting career with a name like Albert Einstein. Yeah, it's funny. I had a friend in high school who was big into theater and moved out to L.A. and her name was Jessica Biel. Oh, yeah. You had to. Yep.
Those are already taken.
Had to make room for that.
Yeah, and there was I'm trying to think. Is Michael Keaton? His name's Michael Douglas. One of them's like actually, yeah. So he had to change. He had to change it too.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's Michael Keaton. His real name's Michael Douglas. Yep. And he had to change it because of that. Because there was another up and coming actor that had already
married to Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Michael Douglas is. Yeah. Also, 80s businessman, known for his greed, for lack of a better word. Yep. It's good.
God. Mm-hmm. Of all of the very highly rated speeches out there in movies, that's one of them. Yeah. But I don't know if I think it's really a pantheon one. I wouldn't say.
Yeah. So it essentially evolves from there. I think there was some point that I was trying to make with all that, but to get what our spoilers was getting to.
The point was a fun fact.
The point was a fun fact.
And we got more than a few fun facts out of that. So
yeah. So I guess
stand your ground.
Good. There was there was some sort of point, but the I found it a very fascinating movie. I guess we can jump into. Would you recommend this movie, Harrison?
Yes, I would. Mm-hmm. In fact, I'm liking Oscar Isaac more and more and more the more I see him in movies, and he really impressed me in Dune. Mm-hmm. Quite impressed me in this movie. So yeah, no, it's not difficult to recommend this. You won't care about the subject matter, but
yes, I think
you will care about pretty much everybody in this movie. Like they all have reasons for you to like cheer them on at least a little bit. So no, it's a good movie.
And I do think that was somewhat, I mean, I don't know if it's the point necessarily, but it is. I think that's important to they were never going to they weren't making a story that was something that you really find the subject matter all that interesting. It's about the people
but if you like storytelling, watch this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most Violent Year.
What were you going to rate this, Harrison?
I will rate it like 3 gushers.
Okay. What, gushers like the candy gushers?
Like the oil gushers. And if we can't find a readily available emoji for that, I quit. No. If we can't find a readily available emoji for that, just like fire.
Okay. We're going to give you oil bins.
Sweet.
Little barrels.
Yep.
And I'm going to take a, because I don't do the amounts. I'm sorry. I have a little green truck. Little green truck.
Hey, all you need. You can store 4 oil barrels in that little green truck right there. So
yeah, sorry, I didn't say I would recommend this movie too. I really liked it. It's a little boring at times.
Yeah.
I do think it's a little it's a little long.
I was going to ask you what you didn't like about this
maybe
movie.
we should say that a bit. Yeah, I think the pacing's odd. I think the number one thing that would help this movie tremendously, and they should have scaled back on some of these car scenes and used their budget this way, is just have a soundtrack from 1981. Jeez, that's why I picked you in the general.
Yeah, no, it didn't have that, did it?
No, it's just anything of someone's listening to a radio of that. Like, that's
right?
all I wanted was just, that is the whole reason you were on this list, movie.
Nope, they cared way too much about business. And
Exactly.
business people hate fun and hate music. So there you go.
But that would have helped. That would have livened me up at a few points.
What track from 1981 would you have picked?
I don't know. I think you could go. I think the Cars were around a little bit from that time period. You could do some Cars. But it's also a little odd of like what would that, because that was such a transitional time. So like it's New York. So New York obviously it had the new wave scene at that point, and it was starting out, but would that character be listening to new wave music at that point? I don't know.
Most certainly not. No.
So that's where I'm like, but would Jessica Chastain have it play? I don't know.
I could see Jessica Chastain being pretty hip. And if you're an accountant and all you're doing like all day is just like you're playing some banger tunes. So no, I wouldn't put it past her. I forget what year the Violent Femmes album came out, but I remember it was the early 80s, and it's like one of the first alt rock considered. But I could see her jamming out to that. Yeah. Just as much as I could like disco. She seems like someone who like really wanted to hang on to disco too. Yeah,
there could be that. She could have some she could have hung around Studio 54 about whenever she was a little younger, and so I can see all that.
Some mafia connections.
Yeah. Yep. So I think that would be my number one thing I would change about the movie, is liven it up with a few that, or just like news stuff that's in the thing, like some sort of things that broke up that kind of set it in its time a little bit more. Like,
where was this movie's Cheddar Goblin at?
Yeah, exactly. I don't know, and then just some pacing things. It did seem to be kind of a little dry at a few points, and I do think that would, I think that would hurt some of its recommendation of it. Like, it's not like it didn't move at a brisk enough pace.
The scene where Oscar Isaac's character like steps over the dead body and like plugs up the oil tanker with his handkerchief would have had a lot more impact if a few of the scenes that preceded it were cut. So I'm totally with you. This was not a movie that needed to be 2 hours and 6 minutes long.
Yes.
It would have done really well, like even up to the hour 45-minute mark. But it's.
And I think it's cutting some of the plot line. Like, I guess, like, it's difficult to say. I think everything just could have been trimmed then to say that's that plot line.
The entire salesperson. Like,
that's a good one.
Even the one, I mean, I know the monologue from Oscar Isaac was good at like talking to the salespeople.
Yeah.
But I mean, it still could have been trimmed quite well.
Yeah.
Salesperson getting punked could have been trimmed quite well,
because it was just in addition to the other stuff that
it explained that he was like really getting under pressure from all sides, But just the him going to the other oil barons and dealing with the AG and everything, that was really enough to cement that fact in your audience's mind. So
I agree. I think that one was the one. The other one that's like only is for thematic reasons is the one where he goes to the guy's fortress thing. That was like, it didn't serve the plot at all, except for kind of being a juxtaposition of where he was heading, which is important. But like,
I was paying a guy $5 an hour to throw tennis balls at me. Now I got this machine. What's up?
Yeah. And then they just let it just go. And
let me think a little bit.
yeah. That was my favorite thing. Where he was even whenever they went up to his house area.
I'll tell you the one thing that I really didn't like about this movie, and it was just how unrealistic it is to be able to hide so many of your company documents from the NYPD.
Yes.
When you have a search warrant on your house.
Yes.
You're just like, I'm just going to go out the back here and hide them under my house.
I agree. That was the one that was,
maybe the secret underground layer was off screen, but give me a break.
Well, and the fact that like he just openly left, he sat with the documents. That was the other part that was bizarre. It's like he didn't just throw them out there and then go around and meet with them and like distract them from it.
No.
He sat down there with the documents. So they were like,
he's just chilling.
So they had seen, he was there and he had just greeted the guy. And so they were just
Can I
like,
get 5 minutes?
No. And then now they're not suspicious that he's nowhere around the house that they were doing the search warrant. I agree. That was one that was a little bizarre of like, that ring tall. But
even then, I totally forgive it because the story, it's just an example of good storytelling with believable characters.
Yes. And I do believe by the end of the movie, you get to the point of they weren't really trying to investigate them. That's the whole, like the point was they were just trying to put some pressure and make it look like they were doing it because they had bosses that were wanting them to clean up the things. So they had to walk through the motions that they were doing this. And it looked like, they rated them on their child's birthday, that they were doing an exceptionally good job. But at the end of the day, he was just wanting political influence.
Yeah.
And so he wasn't going to go too hard on him because he could be beneficial to him later in his career. So
it's how you gain allies as an attorney general, I guess. I'm gonna cute threaten to prosecute you. We're gonna, oh look, we get to show up in court together. How's it going, buddy? Got this deal for you. Yeah. You'll only be fined $500,000. You donate to my campaign.
Another weird thing I made a note of was when he goes to the lady she's inherited this from her grandfather, and that whole scene, which is a great scene.
Yeah.
They're like, well, how much is it? And the guy finally speaks up, how much? He was kind of silently writing notes the entire time. And then Oscar Isaac very obviously says a different number, but it's ADR'd $1.5 million.
Really?
And I kept rewinding it because it is.
What did you lip read there?
I want to say it was like something 100,000.
Huh.
Is what like is in my head I'm thinking he said 700,000 or something else, because it is like it was changed to be just over 1.5 thousand or 1.5 million or something. It was some other. I was like, kept trying to. Yeah, I'm like, what was he saying? Because I think it was completely different. It was a completely different number.
They just couldn't do that take. That building burned down after that scene. That specific boardroom, they just could not recreate. God, how many boardrooms and how many movies have we seen?
Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, couldn't he be off screen and cut? Yeah, I don't know. They probably thought about it all, and there was that just had to be how they had to do it.
Anyways,
ruin the film.
Yep.
Never mind. I take back my recommendation. I thought about it again.
Dear editor of A Most Violent Year. Mm-hmm. You ruined this movie for me. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And the other note about audio, I see. I think the whole thing was kind of
you
ADR.
happen to be an audio expert now. I hear, Cade.
I believe most of it, like most films, are kind of ADR'd later and everything. The one noticeably bad audio that had to be on location and had to be something was when they went to the mob family, or they're at that diner, or they're at the dinner scene. He's like, stop. One of the guys that was talking was really bad audio, bad room audio. And I was like, oh, could they not? I guess that guy left the country afterwards. They couldn't find someone just to mimic that guy's voice or whatever.
I suppose.
But that was another weird one. That was like, oh,
it was in his contract.
Yeah.
Nobody's overdubbing me.
Well, great. Sorry to bring up issues at the very end. I enjoyed the movie at the end of the day, and I thought it was a great little acting thing. I love Oscar Isaac. I think he's really great. I think Jessica Chastain, I think it's on record how much I love Jessica Chastain. I think she's great in this.
When Cade really gets on to you, that shows you that he likes the movie.
Yeah.
Especially when he's praising it for endless amounts of time.
Yeah. And well, when things stick out like that, is kind of like, because it's near the rest of the part of it's really good.
Yeah. I mean, it could have just been really terrible, and then we would have even forgotten about this part. So.
Yeah. Our next film is Beyond the Black Rainbow. And Harrison, we're going to, it's our second feature. We're going to go to intermission. And while we go to intermission, be sure to grab some popcorn and snacks from the concession stand.
I will be sure.
And then we'll be back, and Harrison will give the plot synopsis of the movie Beyond the Black Rainbow. So here is your intermission.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's intermission time. All these delicious treats are waiting for you at the refreshment stand. Delicious fresh popcorn, ice-cold cola, and candy you know and love. They're all ready for you now, so you won't have to miss any of the feature. Come and get them.
And now, on with the show.
There you go.
Beyond the Black Rainbow, 2010. You have this 1980s futuristic cult called Arborea. More like Arborea. And this guy with a totally like weird made up name. What is it?
Main guy?
Gosh, like Mr. Arborea, like Mercurio Arborea, like gives you this public access VHS ass 1980s, like, oh, if you really want the secret to happiness, we have it at our state-of-the-art facility. And it's standard like new age trashy, like just awful stuff. Anyways, his buddy sidekick pal, Dr. Lyle, happens to be conducting some experiments / research / therapy to this young lady who's very drugged up and basically is stashed in Arborea's insane asylum, for lack of a better phrase. And Dr. Lyle slowly just descends into insanity. You find out that he's part of this like 1960s crazy psychedelic hallucinogenic experiment where
with his
fellow cult members, where he claims to have discovered a god beyond worlds, and it felt like staring at a black rainbow, and the god looked through him. But he drives a really cool car. And he happens to be married to someone who's really into meditation. Her name's Rosemary, and his name's Barry. He's Barry Lyle.
Barry Nile, I'm looking at it now.
Is it Nile?
That's what it says on here, Barry Nile.
Oh, it is Nile. It isn't Lyle. It is Nile. But more like D Nile. Dr. Nile. What can I say? Like, he just descends into just stupid Patrick Bateman nonsense and badness, and there's this really long droning escape from this Arborea place by Elena Arborea. We find out later.
You're spoiling the whole film, Harrison. So, well, first off, the poster's really cool.
Yeah.
You see the poster in there?
Soundtrack's really cool too.
It says beyond science, beyond sanity, beyond control, beyond the Black Rainbow.
The reason I'm explaining the whole film is because so only one other movie made me feel this way, and this is like sometimes you get through a film and you wish the art form had never existed. That's how bad this movie was.
What's the other movie that you?
That would happen to be, and it's part of the Criterion Collection, Tarkovsky's Stalker.
I've never seen it.
Which these films do share in common the most interminable scenes that are just droning and droning on. And I get that it's like part of the plot a little bit because, you know, the heroine of this movie is drugged out of her mind and is just like completely sedated and just doing her darndest to get out of there. But this movie is like if 2001 and American Psycho and like the Purple Shroud Black Nike people got in a room together and said, hey, let's make a movie in like half a day and see how we can do. Because it's so bad. I can't stand this movie.
So previously to that, so as we know, Diane's not here.
Yeah.
Diane told me last night before the mouse incident that she had well, let me see. She also did not tell me not to say this, so I think it's fair game.
Once again, I mean, when you're a star.
Yeah. It's all a matter of public record.
It is.
I cannot watch another minute of Beyond the Black Rainbow. 1966 is where I stopped.
Right.
So, okay. I know you didn't like it. I know Diane obviously said that she did not finish it before the mouse incident.
It's like a more shallow Patrick Bateman. Like,
do you not like American Psycho?
I like American Psycho.
Okay. I love American Psycho.
I think the movie's even a little bit better than the book. But it's like the character was inspired by Patrick Bateman, but none of the things that make him interesting as a character are presented in this movie just because of stylistic choices.
So okay. So this movie is the debut feature of, I forget how to pronounce his name, Panos Cosmatos. He is he's the one who directed Mandy, which if you want to hear our thoughts about Mandy, Harrison was also on that.
You know them full well.
we talked a lot about Mandy. Harrison was on that, and Diane, so we got to talk about that previously. So check that out if you haven't.
If there's anything good that could come out of this movie, it's showing that Eva Bourne or Eva Allen can act, is at the level of can act.
So I'm going to say something shocking here, Harrison.
Oh, no, I don't mind.
I like this movie.
I understand that you might have liked this movie.
And to the point that I think I might love this movie.
Oh, wow.
I do like it more than Mandy.
I don't at all.
And I understand that. I know I think you liked Mandy. I was kind of about Mandy.
Yeah. I like the kitschiness of Mandy, like really, yeah.
And I think this goes to show of what style you like. I do not like the sort of heavy metal style of Mandy, and I don't like heavy metal in general of that, and that kind of goes a long way. If you do like that style, then you're going to like Mandy. This is right up my alley of mid-century new age surrealism, 80s roving 80s synth.
The only good thing about the movie was the soundtrack. Like the 80s synth
soundtrack's great.
So I'll tell you, it's Sonoya Caves, who basically like they feel like Boards of Canada's alter ego, like just the perfect ambient kind of weird synth. The bass, like the bass heavy intro is so good after the monologue. Like, I'm just like, get this soundtrack into another movie. It's good. I will say that.
And not only the sound design of the movie is pretty incredible, of the way that the rooms sound, and like this loud humming of stuff, of machines, and how the different going from different where
and
it
how
cuts
it even
and
affects it even affects Elena's voice with like whatever transducer weird kind of diamond shaped crazy futuristic sci-fi MacGuffin is driving this absolute disaster of a plot forward.
So more and more I read. So he said, which I think is another part that what I really liked about it, is he said that it was kind of based on when he was a kid, he would go to video stores, and his parents would never allow him to sort of rent, of course, these horror movies, these real extreme horror films. So he imagined what the plot would be of these things. So this movie is kind of going on like what he would imagine some other movies' plots
would be. If only he would have made this movie in high school.
So these movies, so it's almost like an impression of a movie. It's almost like a feeling of what like a movie could be, of like in your head of what would like a plot be and everything. So like this movie has a plot, a very thin, basic, here's what happens A to B.
Yeah.
But and you can explain it like you did very simply, of like really just like a paragraph or two paragraphs of like, here's what happens in the film. But it's all style. It's all music shots, this imagery. It's all very ethereal. It's very surreal. And it goes a long way of how much you can take of that, and it does.
Yes.
It's
like,
they call it a trance movie. It there's a part of like where you slip in and out of.
There's no question that it's that
consciousness.
Like, you get like in and out of consciousness. It's just like one red box and then one other shade of red box, just transplanted on the screen for an interminable length of time. And I don't think that was just like Plex being, oh, here's the commercial break in your movie that we snuck in your free movie. Yeah. I'm glad I didn't rent this, by the way. Even though the quick trip ads were terrible.
So would you watch this on
Plex?
Okay.
Yeah.
I started watching this on Pluto, which is also free and had these ads. Yeah. I stopped it after the first. I'm like, I can't watch this movie with the ads because of how just jarring that is.
I know.
In between these things.
It was
like
rough.
You having to like switch in your mind of like, okay, now I'm in an ad.
But no, it did feel like an AI-generated, impressionistic, trance horror movie. And I will say that, like...
And I think you're getting the dichotomy. I think this is a very divisive film. I think there's people that love it and there are people that hate it, and I do think that the amount of people that probably love it is very small.
I would not say that I'm a very squeamish person, but whenever it comes to like close-ups on needles in mangled like
the toe scenes, I'm talking about
necrosis, necrotic looking toes, I couldn't do it.
There was a few scenes in general that's like, you know, horror in general doesn't affect me all that much. I don't like gory stuff and all that and stuff. But like, I just find it disgusting. This one's one that's like very effective, like better jump scares, not even jump scares, but like just harsh cuts that are like kind of freak you out. Like the baby head thing of the thing was a shot that sticks with you. The needle in the toe sticks with you. There was another one that had the one where he hit the face is kind of melted under the acid. I think it was when that was sort of starting.
Like where he takes a pill and it's just like the walls just bleed behind him. And then the dude's just out camping and the guy like walks off to take a leak and just like that kind of. I guess you got the tempo right whenever it comes to like how to. Shock or titillate an audience that's into horror. But my personal taste, I will say, like the things that really bug me in horror movies when they happen in horror movies happened in this movie. And I like that kind of just visceral reaction against just a plot I hated because of how cliche it felt. It felt as plastic and shallow as American Psycho portrayed. I think that was set in the 80s.
Yes,
the 1980s was. Like, it felt that. It's almost like people like were just like, well, I guess we're alive. We have no reason to live. Let's check out this cult thing. And
but to me, this is a there's different types of movies. I obviously love. There's different types of movies that are like, this is my jam. There is people talking and having interesting sort of conversation and interesting relationships and interesting things. There's that where it's just a talking movie about things, about stuff.
Movies.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm like, that's my jam. Or give me something where like it really goes deep into a very specific type of job. I think I've talked about that before, like here or different or a side of the world you don't see, or doing jobs that you don't really get to see very often. Something that's interesting and new and gives me some sort of insight that way.
Almost like a documentary.
Almost like a documentary, but like you get to have a little bit more leeway of like, because you get to kind of tell some sort of themes and different stuff, and like put characters in situations that you really probably couldn't in a documentary, and like just setting you in a world essentially that where these people are, and relationships in general is always very fascinating. But then of course there's these big thematically significant movies. Those I really love. That's what what I gravitate to too. However, there's this type of movie that is harder for me to quantify, and there's several movies that I absolutely love that are these, they're vibe movies. They're movies that are like, you get this real feeling from it. It's unquantifiable. It takes pieces of like Americana or whatever, these different things, and like puts it in these interesting looking way, like in this case,
in this absolutely bizarre context.
Yes. Yeah. In this case, this idea that there's this 1960s mid-century kind of research institute. I've always been fascinated by research institutes as well. And this idea,
how many of them are actually cults?
Yes, exactly. And so it's this research institute that came around in the 60s, and it's this new age. Like, also that's very fascinating to me. And it's now 2 decades later, and it's in disrepair. There's no one there. It's empty. Essentially, it's a failed experiment from the 60s.
Right.
And now it's being brought into the 80s, and it's at this empty facility that essentially we would assume would have housed multiple people and all these different...
Imagine you're the abused teenage child of this failed experiment.
Yes.
That's being interviewed by an incredibly emotionally abusive person.
And so there's a person here who is... so the person there is the protege of this cult leader who is completely, he's lost it as well. He's a psychopath and he is keeping essentially a hostage in this mid-century kind of 2001 A Space Odyssey. You brought that up. It's very much meant to look like that.
Yeah, it's like a geodesic dome around a like panopticon kind of crazy facility that's monitored 24/7.
And there's a prism inside that's emanating this like,
and then there's just
I'm 120% on board with that.
Yeah. And then the leader's quarters is just like a senior citizen's like, it's like a nursing home room that this guy's hanging out in.
Yes.
And he's just like watching nature shows.
And he's watching nature shows. Yes, he's watching because he's interested in this sort of nostalgic view of the past. And so he's watching like even like real estate kind of like there are these like kind of like almost these Wonderful World of Disney type thing of like where they're kind of showing these progress of the American. I'm 100%. There's so many aspects of it that I'm on board 100% about. I do think the biggest criticism I have is post. Okay, I love that opening. I love the sort of him explaining what his whole thing, and the fact that it's like this 4-3 and it's this. I was so on board with. I've never been more on board with the movie from that opening, and then the opening where he's talking to the girl, Dr. Niles talking to Elena. That's all really good. And then smash cut Beyond the Black Rainbow. Amazing opening.
Yeah.
From that point to when he goes to meet his mentor, the Ambrosia.
Yeah.
That's the part of the movie that doesn't work.
Right.
To me, if that was the part that needed to be heavily tightened,
it's almost like you want the movie to be set in the 1960s and you want to see the downfall of this institution. You don't want to see like the rubble and the like nothing left but like weird biomorphic robots and 2 doctors and an assistant and like the Messiah figure.
Yeah. To me, it's which I think that's also an important thing. There is this idea of kind of God in the Son and this idea. There's different things of that, but to me, it's that part. I got it. It was out there, but it's like I get the you've laid out the chess pieces. I get what's happening. I get what your tone is. I get what your visual thing is. I get that he has a girl captive in this thing, and she doesn't like being held captive.
Yep.
Like it could have been a lot quicker. That was the part of the movie, because by the time he comes to his mentor's place and injects him all that stuff, and then there's the 1966 flashback to when his first acid trip. Then the movie kind of kicks in and kind of does different things, and then when she escapes, particularly starts to escape, is when the movie is very, very fascinating.
Yeah.
And because then you get to see this facility and what's all in there. And I was on board with that too.
Right. I mean, in terms of set design and sound and possibly even cinematography, I would say
it's just shot on film.
Yeah.
And you can tell, like, I love a movie like where I know where it's pulling from. Like they're pulling from things
now
that
all the people who are really into movies are going to love it. It was shot on film in 2010.
Yes.
Actual film.
But there's so many different, yes, obviously 2001 A Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
But it was Michael Mann's Manhunter is very much with their the Hannibal Lecter thing that he did with that was very highly stylized, and it was kind of like this where it had these multiple colors, and so like there's a lot of pulling from that. There's a lot of pulling from I love where it decided to sort of pull different things from. And to me, pacing wise, it is a chore. It's an absolute chore.
Beyond a chore. It is like you have to pay focus groups to sit through that kind of pacing. It is awful.
But I want to make a point here.
I honestly want to ask, and you can make the point. Go ahead and make the point.
I'm going to make the point here, though, that I think is trying to be kind of an older pacing of a film. Like it's trying to sort of be set in its time, because like it's not slower than 2001: A Space Odyssey is. It's also just
it's just far less interesting.
It is. That's my main, because I think it's a lot of these movies are a chore in our time period, but this is meant to sort of put you in a state. It's intentional, and therefore I can't be too mad at it because of how this was intentional.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah,
sure. It's intentional. I want to ask what you honestly thought of Michael Rogers' performance as Dr. Lyle,
the main guy. Nile. Yeah. Nile, yes. Barry Nile.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did you think of his performance?
I thought it was fascinating. Did you not think so?
I thought it was so bad. I thought it was just terrible acting.
But he's supposed to be kind of like an otherworldly figure, right?
I get the otherworldly figure thing, but like if you're going for otherworldly figure and you're coming home to your wife after a long day of work and you're just bitching, like it's just like you're seething underneath, and it's just like it's so petty and so stupid. And it wasn't even very well acted.
Well, so she's in this state of like, she's like, I don't know.
She's just zonked out.
She's zonked out.
She's just like, I don't know, like
And he's coming back from
burnout from the 60s.
Yes, exactly. And so this movie is very much of the echoes of the 60s being in the 80s. Yes. And he's very much like, well, I'm still trying to do my task in life and I'm trying to do this and so I can see, and then has this other sort of thing of like this otherworldly guy.
Right.
It's B-movie stuff, but I loved it. I love it. And I can't explain it. Like, I don't think it's good. Let me be clear. I don't think this movie is an amazing or amazing whatever.
Stop insulting B movies, Cade. That's all I gotta say.
But this is my jam. This type of movie feeds something in me that I absolutely love. And like another good movie that's kind of does this in an interesting way is that people hate. But it was Escape from Tomorrowland, which was this movie that they shot in guerrilla style in Disneyland and Disney World. And it is also this kind of grotesque movie of just about Disney and it's just horror film and all this stuff. And it's like, but it feeds this thing of like, this is movies about some sort of about
unnameable kind of like sinister backdrop of like, what was this America really like at this time?
And it's distorting Americana, these iconographies of Americana in a perverse sort of, surreal way that is,
and you can really touch into the like Western sort of Joseph Smith going out there with the Mormons, and then just like who's the next cult leader who's going to make it big.
It's also cults on top of this. Yeah. So, but then you get to have like fun things of like our award-winning gardens, and then like they show this award-winning like stuff like that, and the fact that she's taking refuge. This is very much what was the last shot that in a suburban house, because that's what she was seeing on like these the fact that like the TV and the media.
I get that. Like is very much a conformist suburban area she just like stumbles out into.
Because I mean, like, and that's somehow supposed to be your safe haven, or that's supposed to be like, and in fact, it's also just another sort of prison that she's walking into. That like they're in there watching the same TV stuff that she had in hers, so it's really no different than what she was escaping from.
Minus the massive amounts of sedatives, the actual cults, instead of just like, you're just a little brainwashed by television. And the psycho killer who also maybe seems to want to, that notebook was just like so unsavory.
Yes.
The only character I did kind of like in this movie,
but isn't that sort of supposed to be kind of society, the patriarchy in general of like, because I still think that this is a idea of a
that
microcosm.
was his Patrick Bateman moment. I mean, like the same crap filtering through the pages, and then it just like. But it's also into chaos.
It's the point of the film is like that the idea of the suburban thing is very much similar to her own prison is, I think, intentional, and like in the fact that like there is this idea of like that's how certain people would view her, and the people in general would want from her. Yeah.
That's definitely the point of view of the cultists. Like the real prison's out there.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah. I mean, I think that we replicate the same prisons over and over again. Like, that's the sort of
there's an argument to be made there. Yes, I agree.
So I know that this isn't going to be everybody's cup of tea. I will be clear; it's going to be 90% of people are going to hate this movie and probably not finish it. Like Diane didn't finish it because it is.
Honestly, I thought that Rotten Tomatoes would be harsher on it. To be quite honest with you, like.
I think it's like it was initially incredibly harsh when it came out, but people have sort of discovered it later and have, especially post Mandy, that people have went back to this movie and we're kind of giving it a little bit more
that makes sense.
And being that like it's actually shot on film, Mandy was not, and it was made to look like kind of film quality. I think the fact that this was, I find it to be very visually a very beautiful. Disgusting, beautiful movie.
If this movie was a music video, I might have enjoyed it.
Yes.
That's the best I can say about it, because like as a film, I don't know that any of it works well at all. Like it's just like there are these scattered parts that are just like, maybe this could be a movie. But
her escaping from the thing. Did you like? I that was the part that I really enjoyed of her walking around of the different, because
not
like
that much.
to me at that point the movie abandons its sort of visual, like what it had been before inside of the building. It had been incredible because I think it's almost suggested because of the prism.
Yeah,
it's kind of caused this sort of ambience thing that's inside there, but when she's sort of going out and going to different parts of it, and even outside, it's kind of no longer shot. It's still shot on film, and interestingly in different ways.
I do like the scene where she's going between room to room, like the where she's outside for a minute, and
yes,
it seems like she's like, just the rainbow. What do you call it?
Some sort. It's a big tower, or it's a big exhaust kind of thing.
It's like conduits. Yeah, it's conduit. But yeah, it's just like this really nice shade of gray, and then this rainbow conduit, and she's like, very slowly like walking against the wall. Like, there's a little bit of beauty in that.
And then she goes into there, and there's like a zombie thing inside, and like if that was an extended, a little, like that was the thing to extend.
Yeah,
shrink out that beginning part where he's like, he's a bad and he has her in this thing. Like I get that and I understand it, and it's kind of shot in this very like you don't know what's real and what's all.
And this is a huge pet peeve of mine in a lot of movie tropes, and I feel like this is just kind of really lazy writing. Whenever you have a villain and you're just like, this person's like, there's something wrong with him because look, he's opening up a pill bottle of something prescribed to him by a doctor. Look at that. Oh, he's reliant on pills. And then you have like the hero's redemption like arc of, I'm flushing these down the toilet. Oh no, I have a heart attack in real life is what would actually happen. But it's just like, okay, so here's the part of the movie that's probably funded by the Church of Scientology. And so.
Yeah, he lined them all up. And then they have this sort of reveal, of course, that he's like this. He has, all these. How did she say? Appliances? Is that what she called it?
Yeah.
She called it appliances.
That was kind of an interesting line. Like, Barry, I almost didn't hear. I thought I was an intruder. You forgot your appliances. One of which was like a permanently attached lens on his eye or something. So
this
weird.
Has to be a reference to the man who fell to Earth, which is the David Bowie movie in which he's this alien figure, and he very similarly has these eye appliances, and he takes them off sort of in the third act, and he has these bright yellow eyes, and he's bald, and he takes off his ear. He essentially is this, and that's got to be a sort of reference to that, and because very similarly, that's also about a guy who an alien who comes to Earth and becomes seduced by
the color swashes are like 2001. A lot of the like weird kind of diamond shaped thing that's affecting everybody is 2001.
Yeah.
The Notebook's American Psycho. The You've Forgotten Your Appliances is that film. I mean, that's another thing I really don't like about this movie is the references are too obvious. Like, way too obvious. Anyways.
But they're pulling from these kind of interesting places. Like I do think that in some cases they're pulling from like movies that typically people.
I like your taste in films, but I hate your movie.
I don't know. I really liked it. I love.
I understand and relate like why you enjoyed it and what the good parts about it for you and what made it like to the point of love for this movie for you. And I will say that these are not nonsense reasons. These are fairly good reasons to like a film. Just there are so many flaws in this movie for me. And really like if your plot's bad and if like one of your main characters just puts in just one of the worst acting performances like I've seen in a really long time, it's hard for me to overcome that. Even with amazing soundtrack, honestly impressive visuals, good vibes, interesting settings, interesting metaphors. Like, for me, give me a great plot, give me fantastic performances, give me characters that I can relate to and care about. Even
well,
in
it's
like
not
the most,
that. It's not like I think that would be something that there are some people want to like their people or even want to hate or whatever the case is. Like, it's very much these characters aren't likable by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
And they don't even like her. Like, I think
but if they're even believable characters, like you can appreciate like how the character is made. Like, all of the characters in A Most Violent Year, you understood where they were coming from.
Yes.
And you understood kind of what next steps they were taking in front of you. And it worked.
And I do think it goes along with what you think the parameters of film should be. With Most Violent Years, a traditional film. It's the people are acting naturalistically.
It's a period piece.
It's a period. Well, I mean, just from a standpoint of like, here's arcs of characters and themes and how we're going to have dialogue, and here's the scenes and how we're going to tell this story. And the acting's very naturalistic.
Yeah.
This is a movie that's like, we don't want acting's not naturalistic. The main Ellen is probably the most naturalistic sort of character performance that there is. But the other ones are very these sort of impression. The movie's very surreal and impression, and it goes a long way if you're okay with a film, because we were shown a very specific type of film in the modern lens, and this is not that.
Films like that. I mean, I'd say Charlie Kaufman is probably my favorite example, probably one of my favorite screenwriters of all time. He does really that sort of surrealistic, almost unbelievable character arcs in both adaptation and Synecdoche, New York.
But also very dialogue driven.
Still very dialogue driven. You're right.
And this is not that. There's very little dialogue in this movie. It's almost like that's the other thing it's pulling from a lot of silent film, surreal, kind of the surreal, like almost like Metropolis at times, like these sort of.
I would have enjoyed it more as a silent film.
These movies are, I mean, like they're pulling from this sort of older kind of base of films, and I do think that it was kind of, it was pulling from some silent film.
I won't hate on a few of the ingredients.
I liked it. But okay. And I know that a lot of people don't.
For Cade, it's, baby, we got a stew going.
Exactly. Yeah. I also very fascinating about this movie was I started reading behind how this movie got made. And so the guy who made it, the director, he's the son of a director from like, he directed Cobra. Oh. And he directed. Oh, I'll have to look. Let me look up that he directed a lot of these 80s. So he directed Rambo 2, and he directed Tombstone and Cobra. So he comes from a family of people.
That's not a bad filmography to have as a director at all.
And he funded this movie through his. He had DVD residuals from his father's movie.
Wow.
And some movie that I guess got re-released or something on, I have to find it. I don't know where it's at. And so that's what funded this movie. He's like, well, I want to make this movie. I want to launch my film career. And it was, it was later in his life too, but
Well, I'm glad that he succeeded enough to make Mandy. I will say that.
Okay, Harrison, what are you going to, or would you recommend this movie? And what are you rating
it? Ever to anyone, I would never recommend this movie. It just just as much as I despised with a passion Tarkovsky's Stalker, I really disliked to the point of loathing. This one. So Beyond the Black Rainbow is probably like, if you really want to check all the boxes on things that I can't stand in a movie, it's there.
Okay, what are you going to rate this movie, Harrison?
A toe and a needle.
Okay.
That's what I rate it.
Okay, a toe and how about a foot?
Hey, we'll go with that. We'll go with... What about you, Cade?
Let me add your thing. There you are. See it back there? Oh,
Nope,
it's not on anymore.
Not on anymore.
Well, the audience sees it, right?
Yes, they do. That's what counts. And I'll check it out later.
Yes.
Get our view count up.
And I'm going to give it. Sure, we'll just do that. I had the toe and the needle ready because I was also maybe going to do that. So not going to lie. So I will give it a rainbow. It's a rainbow emoji because I like this movie a lot, and I would
a black heart and a rainbow, maybe.
Yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's a good one. Black heart emoji. I've said for all the reasons I liked it. I think it's a unique film.
If you want interesting cinematography ideas, like there is no, you could crib some from Beyond the Black Rainbow. I will definitely say that.
Yeah, I liked what it pulled from, and I liked it. You know, so many I guess it's what some people say for Tarantino movies of where he pulls from and they're like, oh, it's from this or it's from The Searchers or everyone always talks about it. Like, I'm like,
Tarantino recontextualizes his homages really quite well. Like I'm impressed with just how much it's like, it resembles that scene so much, and yet such a different thing is happening.
Yeah.
Not so much with this movie.
But to me, it's like what he's pulling from is not my cinema, like what I like. Yeah. But what he's pulling from in this movie is like, oh, okay, this is some what I kind of dig, and even like just for vibes alone, I think it's one of the best vibe movies I've seen. From like of what I really like, because I've said before I love 80s and I love synth, and it's pulling it, and then I love this sort of mid-century and the idea of like this decrepit institute of like all that stuff is very, very fascinating to me.
Shout out to Sonoya Caves. Your soundtrack actually kept me watching this movie.
Yeah, and it's well worth it just for you could listen to it just from that. I like I said, it could have been tightened in quite a few different areas, but that's essentially all that I have. Is it could have just used a little bit of tightening in quite a few different things.
Leaking a little bit of oil.
Yeah. But no, I would recommend it, but with a huge caveat of if what I said doesn't intrigue you, then don't.
Do you like slowcore, vibey, trancey horror? It may be worth putting on your docket.
And surreal. I think surreal. like that would have been the thing that sold me a bit, is that this is like a surreal horror that has some thing. I would say it has themes of, it goes about its themes in kind of ways that most films don't, but it's themes about the sort of new age philosophies and the sort of how those are not, those sort of problems there.
How those are dropped on people.
Yeah. Yep. Well, great. That has been Beyond the Black Rainbow talk. I would have liked to probably have had Diane on this because she would have been very, very different of it.
We'll get Diane's take on a future show. I will be sure to ask her. What movies do we have coming up, Cade?
Well, we have to get into our preview time in order to talk about that. So one more graphic.
Well,
so real quick, and we'll go and we'll tell you what we have next week here on Double Feature Movie Club.
And now, preview time. When it comes to entertainment, you can't beat a good film. So let's take a look at what's coming your way.
When it comes to entertainment, you just can't beat a good film.
You just can't do more cowbell.
So next week's films. This has been fun, Harrison. But
It
next,
certainly has.
I'm glad you agreed. I was just going to say it as a fact, but I'm glad that you agreed with the. Good. So it's 2 people that says it's been a fun time.
I have solo manned the guest list on this show.
Yes.
For the first time.
For the first time, I think I said that before the show went on, but yes, this is the first time that it's been a 2-person thing and then without. Previously, it had only been Diane and I if we did a 2-person. Mm-hmm. So this, I'm hopefully
not jealous.
And we'll have to have Diane on. We'll have to have Diane on again. Oh no, we'll have to have her on next week to sort of talk about the ordeal.
If she's not having terrible mouse problems.
It's grown to even more comedic proportions.
It's Ratatouille. The worst pun of all time. Like, no. Why did someone try to rip off Ratatouille with Ratatouille? Anyways, that's not the film we're watching next time.
We are watching, so we have 2. Next week is Sci-Fi Week, which this was also kind of sci-fi a little bit, but this next week is Indie Sci-Fi Week, and it is The Vast of Night and High Life. So The Vast of Night is an Amazon. Those might both be Amazons. I will check that real quick. But they're indie things. The Vast of Night is I even believe we'll verify next week, but I think part of Vast of Night was actually filmed here in Oklahoma. Vast of Night is an Amazon original, so it is on Amazon Prime. And High Life is what's his name? Robert Pattinson. It is an A24 movie, so it's on Showtime. That's what it's on. So, or you can rent it. Or you can rent it. So yes, those are 2 interesting movies. We'll see. I, of course, haven't watched them yet, so I don't know if they're good or not. But
you can definitely drop a comment or a Twitch chat message about how much you adore Robert Pattinson. I'm sure if you, I hear a few people like him.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think so. We have some emojis that came through from Wishwashing. I can see here.
I never knew that about you.
So yes, be sure to so if you're listening to this on our stream here, or watching it later on YouTube, because it will be available later as well. Like and subscribe to the Cade Thomas channel. You can
put
also
up some pogs in chat.
Yes, on Twitch. Yes. So yes, if you don't, you can also go to our Twitch channel. It's really popping.
And we're now Spotify stars as well.
Yes, we're
in
also
full video form.
Wishwashing says enable Rat Jam for Diane.
That actually is a really appropriate animated little emoji. I'll show you later.
Okay,
it's a good one.
Okay, so yeah, so I think we said everything. If you're listening to this later as a podcast, rate us 5 stars and download. I think people said you supposed to download podcasts or add them to whatever. So I don't know. Do something. Click all the buttons.
Even report us. Any interaction you want to do.
Yeah. Click all the buttons, even the negative ones. We would appreciate it. Well, we wouldn't appreciate it as much as we would, I guess, deal with it.
Yeah.
Silently.
Yeah.
Yep. Great.
That's how I deal with things.
That's been the 24th episode of Double Feature Movie Club. It's been it's an interesting one. It certainly is an interesting one. Thank you, Harrison, for joining for this and watching these 2 movies. Are you happy that you watched them at the end of the day and we're here on the show?
At the end of the day, no. It's been great. B, I was really looking forward to an episode where we disagreed about the movie, to be quite honest.
Yes.
And no doubt. Great time.
It's I think that's always fun. There's different differences of opinion there. I think, and that this is fun times. Well,
he says that,
but we didn't use your close up. You wanted your close up really quick. Oh, wrong one. Great. Perfect. Well, see you next week. High Life and what did I say? And The Vast of Night.
Highlight and Vast of Night.
Bye.
Have a good one.